I never imagined that at 60, I'd find myself sitting alone in my car outside my son's house, with nowhere else to go. Yet, there I was, staring at the dark windows of the farmhouse where my son James lives with his wife Vanessa. Tears traced down my cheeks, faintly lit only by the soft glow of the dashboard lights. Just 12 hours earlier, I had a husband of 35 years, a beautiful home in Riverside, and the comforting certainty that my children would always be there for me. Now, all I had was a hastily packed suitcase in the trunk, and the heartbreaking truth that everything I thought was unshakable had shattered in a single day. Before we dive back in, let us know where you're tuning in from. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow, I've got something even more special lined up just for you. I never imagined that at 60 years old I'd find myself sitting alone in my car outside my son's house, nowhere to go, watching the dark windows of the farmhouse where James lives with his wife Vanessa. The tears on my cheeks caught the dim glow of the dashboard lights as I stared ahead, heart heavy and mind reeling. Just 12 hours earlier, I had a husband of 35 years, a beautiful home in Riverside, and the comforting certainty that my children would always be there for me. Now, I had a hastily packed suitcase in my trunk and a devastating realization. Everything I thought was solid in my life had crumbled in a single day. It was a crisp Tuesday morning in October when everything changed. The maple trees outside our bedroom window had just started to blush with fiery reds and oranges, a view I'd treasured through 3 decades of autumns in our Riverside home. I sat at the kitchen island, sipping my coffee, planning Thanksgiving dinner, always my favorite holiday to host. Rob, my husband, was unusually quiet that morning, methodically spreading peanut butter on his toast while avoiding my gaze. "I think we should invite Vanessa's parents this year," I said, breaking the silence, hopeful to spark some warmth. James had mentioned they might not have plans, and it seemed like a chance to get to know them better. Rob nodded, absently, his tone flat and detached. "Whatever you want to do, Maggie." That flatness unsettled me. After 35 years of marriage, I'd learned to hear the unspoken. "Is everything okay?" I asked, setting down my mug. He finally looked up, his blue eyes unreadable behind his glasses. "We need to talk, Maggie. But not now, tonight, after dinner." Those words sent a chill through me despite the warmth of the kitchen. "We need to talk" was never good news. I forced a smile. "Okay, tonight then." The rest of the day blurred. I moved through our spotless house in a fog, cleaning things that were already clean, rearranging flowers that didn't need rearranging. Anxiety gnawed at me, the looming conversation casting a shadow over every moment. By afternoon, I couldn't stand the waiting anymore. I decided to visit James and Vanessa at their farmhouse on the edge of town, partly to discuss Thanksgiving plans, but mostly to distract myself from what awaited me that evening. Usually, the winding country roads and the sight of horses grazing in pastures calmed me, but today my knuckles were white on the steering wheel. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios, retirement plans, health concerns, or something worse. When I pulled into their gravel driveway, I noticed unfamiliar cars parked outside. Company. I hesitated, wondering if I should have called ahead, but then decided to surprise them. I'd brought fresh apple cider and cinnamon donuts from the farmer's market, a perfect autumn treat. I knocked on the door, balancing the cider and pastry box in one arm. From inside, I could hear laughter and the clinking of glasses. James opened the door. His expression shifted from welcoming to surprised, then to something like discomfort. "Mom," he said, the word coming out as a question. "What are you doing here?" "I was in the neighborhood," I said brightly, holding up my offerings. "Thought I'd drop by with some treats. Is this a bad time?" Before he could answer, a woman appeared beside him. Not Vanessa, but someone older with Vanessa's eyes and smile. Carol, Vanessa's mother, whom I'd met only once at their wedding 2 years ago. "Margaret, isn't it?" Carol said, pleasant but cool. "What a surprise." "Maggie, please," I corrected gently, offering a smile. "I didn't realize you were in town." "Oh, we've been here almost a week," she replied. "David and I are helping the kids prepare for the arrival." The arrival? Confusion clouded my thoughts. James cleared his throat, exchanging a look with his mother-in-law. We were going to tell you and Dad this weekend, he said. The news should have brought joy. Instead, I felt hollow. A week. They'd known for at least a week. Vanessa's parents were here helping them prepare. And yet, I was the last to know. The grandmother-to-be, treated like an afterthought. That's wonderful news, I managed, trying to hide the hurt. Why didn't you call? I would have helped. It's been hectic, James interrupted, avoiding my eyes. Vanessa's been feeling sick and we've been setting up the nursery. I could have helped with that, I said softly. An awkward silence settled, broken only when Vanessa appeared in the hallway behind them. Her hand rested lightly on her still flat stomach. Maggie, she said, her voice strained with forced cheerfulness. What a surprise. Looking past them, I saw the dining room table set with Vanessa's good china, the set I'd helped her pick out after the wedding. Wine glasses filled, candles lit. It looked like a celebration in full swing. I'm sorry, I said, understanding dawning. You're having a dinner party. I should have called first. It's just a small gathering, Vanessa explained. My parents, my sister, and her husband. The implication hung in the air, a family celebration. Their family, not including me. I should go, I said, forcing a smile as I handed the box and cider to James. Enjoy these, and congratulations on the baby. That's wonderful news. As I turned to leave, Carol's voice stopped me. Why don't you join us, Margaret? There's plenty of food. It was a courtesy offer. Nothing more. Her tone made that clear. James's expression, a mixture of obligation and discomfort, confirmed it. No, I couldn't intrude, I said quickly. Rob's waiting for me at home. We've got dinner plans. I just wanted to drop these off. It was a lie, but it preserved my dignity. As I walked back to my car, I heard the door close behind me and the laughter resume, as if I'd never interrupted. That was the first crack in my world, a fissure that would soon become a chasm. On the drive home, my vision blurred with unshed tears. It wasn't just being excluded from the dinner, or even learning about my first grandchild's impending arrival as an afterthought. It was the realization that in my son's new life, I was becoming peripheral, an outsider. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the front lawn. Rob's car was already there, unusual, as he usually worked late on Tuesdays. Inside, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, a glass of whiskey in front of him. Another oddity, as he rarely drank hard liquor, especially on weeknights. You're home early, I said, setting my purse down on the counter. I came home to talk, he replied, voice steady but strained. Where were you? I went to see James and Vanessa, I said, sinking into the chair across from him. Did you know she's pregnant? Her parents have been in town for a week helping set up the nursery. Rob didn't react to the news or my hurt. Instead, he took a slow sip of whiskey, set the glass down carefully, and looked me directly in the eyes. Maggie, he said, I want a divorce. The words hung between us, impossible to unhear. I stared, sure I'd misunderstood. What? I've been thinking about this for a long time, he continued, each word precise and rehearsed. I'm not happy, Maggie. I haven't been for years. And I don't think you are either. That's not true. I protested, voice rising. We've been fine. We've been good. 35 years. Rob. 35 years of building a life together. He shook his head slowly. We've been coexisting, not living. Not really. I want more than this, Maggie. And I think deep down, so do you. Because I spend too much time with the children, because I volunteer too much, I can cut back, we can travel more, do those river cruises you've talked about. It's not about what you do or don't do, he interrupted, maddeningly calm. It's about what I feel, or rather what I don't feel anymore. As he spoke, I noticed details I'd been too distracted to see earlier. the suitcase by the door, his jacket draped over it, car keys placed deliberately on the side table. "You're leaving," I whispered, realization dawning. He nodded. "I found an apartment downtown. I'll come back for the rest of my things later this week." "An apartment," I repeated numbly. "How long have you been planning this?" He hesitated, then admitted, "I signed the lease 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks. While I'd been planning our Thanksgiving menu, ordering new decorations, thinking about our future, he'd been planning his exit. "Is there someone else?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "No," he said. And I wanted to believe him. "This isn't about another woman, Maggie. It's about me. I need to find out who I am outside this marriage before it's too late." The midlife crisis cliché, I scoffed bitterly, would be laughable if it weren't destroying my life. "You're 62, Rob. You know exactly who you are." "That's just it," he said, shaking his head. "I don't think I do. I've been Rob Wilson, accountant, husband, father. For so long I've lost track of who Rob Wilson actually is. What he wants. What makes him happy. And you think abandoning your family will help you figure that out?" My voice was rising now, anger cutting through shock. "I'm not abandoning anyone," he said firmly. "James and Emily are adults with their own lives. And I'm not abandoning you either. I'm just changing our arrangement." "Our arrangement?" I echoed, disbelief flooding me. "That's what you call 35 years of marriage? An arrangement?" He sighed, finishing his whiskey in one gulp. "I knew you wouldn't understand." "You're right," I said, tears spilling over. "I don't understand how you can throw away 3 decades of life together without even trying to fix whatever you think is broken." "There's nothing to fix, Maggie. It's not broken. It's just over, at least for me." With those words, he stood, grabbed his jacket and suitcase, and walked out the door. Just like that, 35 years ended in a 10-minute conversation. I sat at the kitchen table long after his car had disappeared down the street, trying to make sense of what had just happened. 2 bombshells in one day. My son starting a family without including me, and my husband walking out without warning. My world was collapsing, and I had no idea how to stop it. The hours after Rob left felt surreal, as if I were watching someone else's life unravel. I wandered through the empty house, touching things that suddenly seemed foreign. The family photos on the walls, the wedding album on the shelf, the kitchen where we had shared countless meals. All those years, those memories. And now they felt like relics from another lifetime. I tried to call James, hoping to lean on him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. When I finally reached Emily, her voice was cautious, like she was treading carefully around something fragile. "Mom, are you okay?" "Not really," I admitted, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I need to see you and James. All of you." She promised she'd arrange something soon, but even her words couldn't fill the sudden emptiness I felt. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed in our shared room, clutching the pillow Rob had left behind. Sleep refused to come. I thought about the life I'd built, the love I'd given, and wondered how quickly it had been discarded. The next morning, I called Karen, my close friend and lawyer, hoping for some guidance. Karen had been a steady presence through difficult times in my life, a voice of reason and calm. When I told her what happened, she listened without interrupting. Then gently she said, "Maggie, it's time to think about your future, not his. You deserve respect, and you need protection." Her words gave me strength I didn't know I had. I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney specializing in cases for women in later life, determined to protect my interests, my dignity, as I navigated this new, terrifying terrain. Meanwhile, the watercolor class I had impulsively signed up for last month beckoned like a refuge. On my first night back, surrounded by strangers and paintbrushes, I felt a flicker of peace. The act of creating something with my own hands, focusing on color and shape rather than heartbreak and betrayal, reminded me that there was still a part of me untouched by loss. Arthur, a quiet man in the class, noticed my somber mood and invited me for coffee afterward at the cafe next door. Surprisingly, I found myself accepting. The old Maggie would have hurried home to check on Rob, to tidy the house, to squeeze in laundry before bed. But Rob wasn't waiting, the house wasn't mine to tidy anymore, and the only laundry I had to worry about was my own. Safely back at the hotel, the conversation flowed easily as we sipped our drinks and shared stories about what had brought us to the watercolor class. Arthur had taken it up after his wife's death 2 years ago, finding solace in the careful attention it required. Jenna, a college student and architecture major, wanted to develop her rendering skills. Luis, a nurse, was there on his therapist's recommendation as a stress management technique. When it was my turn, I hesitated but decided on honesty. My husband left me 3 days ago, ending our 35-year marriage. My son made it clear I'm not a priority in his life. So I'm rebuilding, figuring out who I am when I'm not defined by other people. The silence that followed wasn't awkward or pitying but respectful. Then Arthur raised his coffee cup in a small salute. "To new beginnings," he said simply. "To new beginnings," we echoed. In that moment, surrounded by strangers who asked nothing of me but my presence, I felt a real spark of hope, that life after devastation might hold unexpected joys. The week that followed settled into a rhythm unlike my previous life. Mornings spent handling practical matters. Meeting with the divorce attorney Karen recommended, not Rob's mediator but someone who specialized in protecting women's interests in late-life divorces. Setting up utilities for my new place, sorting financial records. Afternoons devoted to small pleasures. Visits to the botanical garden I'd always meant to explore, long walks by the river, browsing bookstores without watching the clock. Evenings filled with new experiences. Watercolor class, a poetry reading at the library, a documentary film screening at the community college. At each event, I met people and had conversations that weren't centered on family obligations or household management. I was just Maggie, not Mom, not Mrs. Wilson, not committee chairperson or reliable volunteer. Rob texted daily, puzzled by my lack of distress and unwillingness to meet or discuss reconciliation. "We should talk," he'd write. "I'm worried about you. Emily says you've cut your hair. I'd like to see it." I responded politely but briefly, establishing new terms. "I'm fine, thank you for your concern. Yes, I've made some changes. They suit me. I'll be ready to discuss divorce details next week after I've consulted with my attorney." James called twice more, each time inviting me to dinner, which I declined with excuses. His frustration was evident during our last conversation. "You can't avoid us forever," he said, voice tight. "We're still your family." "I'm not avoiding you," I replied calmly. "I'm prioritizing myself for the first time in decades." "There's a difference." "Well, when will you have time for us in this new self-centered life of yours?" His question was meant to sting, to shame me back into my familiar role, but I refused to take the bait. When our relationship can be balanced and mutual rather than one-sided, when I'm valued as a person, not just a convenience, when you're ready to truly see me, not just the role I've played in your life, I said. The silence that followed was profound. Then quietly, "I don't even know what that means." "I know you don't," I said, softening slightly. "That's part of the problem, but I hope someday you will." Emily was more understanding, especially after I invited her to lunch at a cafe near her school. She arrived looking worried, expecting to find me falling apart. Instead, she found me vibrant, dressed in colors she'd never seen me wear, sporting a hairstyle that made me look a decade younger. "Mom," she said, momentarily confused as I waved from my table. "You look amazing." "Thank you," I replied, standing to hug her. "I feel not amazing yet, but getting there." Over lunch, I told her about the in-law suite, the watercolor class, the new people I was meeting. She listened with growing wonder, occasionally shaking her head in disbelief. "It's like you're a different person," she said finally. "Not different," I corrected gently. "Just more fully myself. Parts of me that got buried under years of being what everyone else needed me to be are finally getting some air." "I never realized," she began, then stopped. "Never realized what?" "That you weren't happy. That you were giving so much of yourself away. I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. I didn't realize it either, not consciously. And I don't regret the love and care I gave you, James, and your father. I just wish I'd kept more of it for myself along the way. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I want to know this version of you, Mom. The real you. Those words, so simple but so profound, broke something open in my heart. I'd like that very much, I whispered. I'm still getting to know her myself. Moving day arrived with unexpected sunshine, a rare blessing for Riverside in late October. Standing in the doorway of my new space, I watched Karen and Eleanor arrange the last of my modest belongings. The reading chair nestled perfectly in the bay window, new dishes neatly stacked in the kitchen cabinets, watercolor supplies laid out on the small desk beneath the west-facing window. It's coming together beautifully, Eleanor said, smoothing the comforter on my bed. She was in her 70s, silver hair pulled back, moving with the unhurried grace of someone at peace. I found myself hoping I might attain such serenity one day. Thank you both for helping, I said, a mix of gratitude, excitement, and a thread of anxiety twisting in my chest about facing my first night truly on my own. The hotel had been a temporary refuge. This was my new reality. We'll leave you to settle in, Karen said, as intuitive as ever. But I'm just a phone call away if you need anything. And Eleanor and Henry are right through that door. She gestured toward the connecting door leading to the main house. Eleanor had assured me it would remain locked, with each of us knocking if we needed to communicate. After they left, I wandered through my new home, touching surfaces, adjusting small details. The space was modest, just under 600 square feet, but it felt luxurious in its simplicity. Nothing here wasn't mine by choice, nothing that carried complicated memories or obligations. I unpacked my clothes slowly, marveling at how few items I'd brought from my old life compared to the new pieces I'd purchased. When my phone rang, Rob's name flashed on the screen. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but the new boundaries I was establishing weren't about avoidance but about engagement on different terms. Hello, Rob. Maggie. His voice sounded strained. I'm at the house. Your things. Many of them are gone. I moved today, I replied simply. I told you I would. But so much is still here. Your books, your mother's china, your gardening supplies. Aren't you taking them eventually? Perhaps. I'm starting with what I need, not what I've accumulated. He made a frustrated sound. This isn't like you, Maggie. You're acting rashly. No, I corrected gently. I'm acting decisively. There's a difference. The mediator has an opening next Thursday at 2. I've tentatively scheduled us. I sighed, irritated by his presumption. I won't be meeting with your mediator, Rob. I've retained my own attorney. She'll be contacting yours to arrange initial discussions. His silence spoke volumes. He'd expected me to follow his lead as I had so often before. Attorney, Maggie? That's so adversarial. I thought we could handle this amicably. Protecting my interests isn't adversarial. It's prudent. And given that you made the unilateral decision to end our marriage without discussion, you forfeited the right to dictate how we proceed from here. Another silence, longer this time. Then his voice softened. May I at least know where you're living in case of emergency? I hesitated, then relented slightly. I've taken an in-law suite on Maple Avenue. That's only a few blocks from. He stopped abruptly, clearing his throat. Nothing. It doesn't matter. Something in his tone set off an uneasy alarm in me. Well, Riverside isn't that large a town. I'm sure we'll manage to avoid awkward encounters. Of course, he agreed quickly. Too quickly. Listen, Maggie, I've been thinking. Maybe we've been hasty. Maybe we should consider counseling before moving straight to divorce. The suggestion caught me off guard. Counseling. You walked out, Rob. You said it was over. I know what I said, he replied, frustration edging his voice. But I've had time to reflect. Maybe we gave up too easily. 35 years is a long time to just discard. The word choice didn't escape me. Discard. You discarded it, Rob, not me. And now you're having second thoughts because the reality of apartment living isn't matching your fantasy of freedom. That's not fair. Then why the sudden change of heart? It's been less than 2 weeks. He sighed heavily. Maybe seeing you move on so efficiently has made me realize what I'm losing. The admission hung between us. Unexpected, complicated. Part of me, a part one wasn't proud of, felt vindicated. He'd expected me to crumble, to beg, to fall apart. My resilience rattled him. I'm not interested in reconciliation, Rob. That door closed when you walked out with a pre-packed suitcase and a pre-leased apartment. People make mistakes, he said quietly. Even after 4 decades together. The plea in his voice stirred something in me. Not love or longing, but a weary compassion. Yes, they do. And sometimes those mistakes have permanent consequences. I need to go now. My attorney will be in touch. After hanging up, I sat on my new bed, turning the conversation over in my mind. Rob wanted to reconcile, or at least said he did. 2 weeks ago, I might have leapt at the chance. Now, the very idea felt like stepping backward into a life that no longer fit. What I needed, what we both needed, was time. Time for me to continue discovering who I was outside my role as Rob's wife. Time for Rob to genuinely confront the impulses that led him to walk away rather than transform our relationship from within. Time to see if the people we were becoming could build something new together, or if we were better apart. That realization brought a measure of calm. This wasn't a crisis demanding immediate resolution. It was a process, slow and painful and potentially beautiful in its outcome, whatever that might be. The weeks that followed brought a rhythm to my new life, a gentle cadence of discovery and quiet joy. November arrived with crisp mornings and golden afternoons, the kind that bathed the world in amber light. I settled into routines of my own making. Morning pages written at my small desk as the sun rose, watercolor class on Wednesday evenings, volunteer hours at the library expanded to include leading a book club for seniors. My little in-law suite transformed from a blank canvas into a true reflection of myself. I hung art that spoke to me, not bland landscapes Rob had preferred, but vivid abstracts and black and white photographs of distant places I longed to visit. Eleanor taught me how to propagate houseplants, and soon my windowsills hosted tiny green tendrils stretching toward the light. I adopted a senior cat from the shelter, a dignified orange tabby named Oscar who claimed the reading chair as his own, leaving me to sit cross-legged on the floor beside him, offering occasional ear scratches. Through it all, I maintained my boundaries, gentle but firm. Rob called regularly. His voice grew steadier each time, his therapist helping him untangle the midlife knots that had driven him to such drastic action. Our conversations became amicable, focused on practical matters, bills, tax preparations, the logistics of the divorce that neither of us seemed eager to finalize but that remained a quiet presence in our interactions. James and Vanessa invited me to dinner twice. The first visit was strained, conversation halting as all of us were hyper-aware of the shifting ground beneath our relationships. The second was easier, perhaps because Vanessa's pregnancy had progressed enough to give us a neutral focus. Her small baby bump prompting discussions of names and nursery colors rather than family fractures. Emily proved the greatest surprise. Rather than pulling away, she leaned in. She visited frequently, sometimes with her children but often alone. We talked, really talked, about everything. Her marriage, stronger than I'd realized. Her career ambitions, larger than she'd admitted before. Her own questions about identity beyond motherhood. I always saw you as just Mom, she confessed one evening as we shared a bottle of wine on my tiny patio. It never occurred to me that you might have regrets or dreams beyond us. Not regrets, I corrected gently, just paths not taken. We all have them. She tilted her head, studying me in the soft glow of the string lights I'd hung along the fence. You seem happier now, even with everything that's happened. The observation gave me pause. Was I happier? The answer surprised me with its clarity. I admitted, not because my marriage ended or because my life was appended, but because I finally gave myself permission to matter. And I had. That was the true transformation of these past weeks. Not the external changes to my appearance or living situation, but the internal shift that placed my own needs and desires on equal footing with everyone else's. But life, I was learning, doesn't allow for simple linear progress. It circles back, tests resolve, offers new challenges just when equilibrium seems within reach. That test came on a Tuesday morning in early December. Exactly 6 weeks after Rob had walked out. I was preparing to visit the house, our house, to finally collect more of my belongings. The divorce proceedings had begun, paperwork filed by respective attorneys, the process civil if somber. Though Rob and I communicated regularly, we had carefully avoided being in the same physical space, both intuitively knowing such an encounter would be emotionally complicated. I had arranged to go while he was at work, giving myself the privacy to sort through decades of possessions without an audience. But as I pulled into the driveway, his car sat in its usual spot. My heart sank, irritation flaring. Had he forgotten our arrangement or deliberately ignored it? For a moment, I considered leaving, rescheduling for another day. But the thought of prolonging this task, already postponed multiple times, made me square my shoulders and approach the front door. I still had a key, but it felt wrong to use it. This wasn't my home anymore. I knocked. Rob answered almost immediately, as if he'd been waiting. He looked different, healthier than during his apartment breakdown, certainly, but changed in subtler ways. A new haircut, shorter and more current than his decades-old style. Casual clothes rather than the business attire or weekend golf shirts that had made up his entire wardrobe for as long as I could remember. "Maggie," he said, and something in the way he spoke my name, not with possession or presumption, but with a kind of careful respect, caught me off guard. "You were supposed to be at work," I said, unable to keep the accusation from my voice. "I took the day off," he admitted. "I thought we should talk. Really talk, in person." I hesitated, torn between annoyance at his presumption and recognition of its inevitability. Sooner or later, we would have to face each other properly. "I came to collect my things." "I know," he said. "But maybe we could have coffee first. I've made a fresh pot." The invitation was offered without pressure, an option I could freely decline. That, more than anything, made me nod and step inside. The house felt simultaneously familiar and foreign, like returning to a childhood home long after moving away. Everything was as I remembered it, yet my perspective had shifted so profoundly that nothing looked quite the same. Rob led me to the kitchen, always the heart of our home, and poured coffee into my favorite mug without asking. The small gesture of remembrance touched me unexpectedly. "You look well," he said as we sat at the breakfast nook where we'd shared thousands of meals over the years. "More than well. You look vibrant." "Thank you," I replied, cradling the warm mug. "You seem better too." He nodded, running a hand through his newly cropped hair. "Therapy helps. And time." He hesitated, then added, "Perspective." "Perspective on what?" I threw away. "On why I did it." He gazed out the window toward the backyard where the rose bushes I'd tended for years stood dormant for winter. "Do you remember our 10th anniversary trip to that bed and breakfast in Vermont?" The question seemed random, but I nodded. Of course. It was autumn. The foliage was spectacular. "We took that hike up to the ridge," he continued. "It was longer than we expected, and you were worried about getting back before dark. But when we reached the top, the view," I finished softly, "miles of forests in every shade of red and gold." "You said something I never forgot," he said. "You said, sometimes you have to climb higher to see how vast the world really is." He turned back to me, eyes holding mine. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately. How I've spent my entire adult life in the valley, head down, following the established path. Work, home, family obligations, round and round in circles. Never climbing high enough to see what else might be out there." I sipped my coffee, allowing him the space to continue. My therapist helped me see that I wasn't really trying to escape you when I left. I was trying to escape the smallness of the life I'd created for myself, the narrowness, the predictability. He sighed. But I went about it all wrong. Instead of destroying what we had, I should have talked to you. Should have asked if you felt it too, that sense of confinement. I did, I admitted. But I channeled it differently. I found meaning in the smallness, in the daily acts of care. Until you couldn't anymore, he observed. Until I forced your hand by leaving. I considered this. Maybe I needed the push. Maybe we both did. Silence settled between us, not uncomfortable, but waiting with unspoken questions. Why did you want to talk today, Rob? What's changed? He leaned forward slightly, expression earnest. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what went wrong, about what I want moving forward. And I've realized something important. What's that? That I don't want to be married to the woman you were pretending to be for my comfort. I want to know the woman you actually are. He gestured to me, encompassing the changes both visible and invisible. This Maggie, the one with opinions and boundaries and a life of her own making. The declaration caught me completely off guard. I had expected pleas for reconciliation based on nostalgia, on the comfort of the familiar. Not this recognition of transformation, this embrace of the very changes that had initially threatened him. You don't even know who I'm becoming, I said carefully. I barely know myself. That's just it, he replied, a new energy animating his features. I want to find out, not as your husband necessarily, maybe just as someone who cares about you. Someone who wants to see you flourish rather than diminish. I set down my mug, studying him with new eyes. Was this performance a strategy to win me back? But no, there was an authenticity to his words, a humility that the old Rob could never have mustered. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Friendship, he said simply. For now. A chance to get to know each other again without expectations or obligations. To see if the people we're becoming might have a place in each other's lives, in whatever form that takes. And if that friendship never leads back to marriage, then I'll have the privilege of knowing the real Maggie Wilson, which is more than I deserve after the way I left. The answer disarmed me completely. It acknowledged my autonomy, respected my journey, asked for nothing beyond the opportunity to witness it. I'd like that, I found myself saying. Friendship. New territory for us. Relief softened his features. Thank you. We finished our coffee, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. His therapy insights, my watercolor progress, news of James and Vanessa's impending parenthood. When we drained our mugs, I stood. I should start sorting through my things. I didn't bring many boxes, so I'll focus on essentials today. Let me help, he offered. Then quickly added, or not, whatever makes you comfortable. I considered the offer. Working together would be more efficient and perhaps a practical test of this tentative new friendship. You can help, I decided. But Rob, this doesn't change the divorce proceedings. Not yet, anyway. I need that legal clarity while we figure out whatever this is. He nodded, accepting the boundary without protest. Understood. We spent the afternoon moving methodically through the house, boxing my books, my mother's china, photograph albums, and various treasures that held meaning for me alone. Rob worked alongside me with surprising sensitivity, never questioning my choices, offering help when needed, but otherwise giving me space to process the emotional weight of dismantling a shared life. By late afternoon, my car was filled with carefully packed boxes, and I was physically and emotionally exhausted. We stood in the driveway in the fading winter light, an awkward moment of uncertainty between us. Thank you, I said simply. For your help and for... I gestured vaguely, unable to articulate the complex appreciation I felt for his unexpected evolution. Thank you for giving me a chance to show you who I might become, he replied. Even if it's just as your friend. I nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the day's emotional currents. I should go. Of course. He stepped back, hands in his pockets. "Maggie, would you consider having dinner sometime next week? At that new place downtown everyone's talking about. Just two friends catching up." The invitation hung in the air between us, a bridge to possibility without demand. A month ago, I might have seen it as a trap, an attempt to pull me back into old patterns. Now, secure in my new sense of self, it felt like an opportunity to continue this careful exploration of what might be. "I'd like that," I said. "Text me the details." As I drove away, boxes of my past carefully packed around me, I felt a curious lightness. Not the giddy relief of a problem solved or a decision made, but the open-ended possibility of a path not yet defined. Rob and I might find our way back to each other in some new configuration, or we might not. The beauty was in the uncertainty, in the freedom to discover rather than presume. That evening, back in my little sanctuary, I unpacked my mother's china, arranging it carefully in the small cabinet. Eleanor and Henry had helped me refinish the delicate floral pattern. Once formal and used only for holidays and special occasions, it now seemed different in this context. Not precious heirlooms to be protected, but beautiful objects meant to be enjoyed daily. Oscar watched from his perch on the reading chair, tail twitching with feline judgment as I rearranged my space to accommodate these treasures from my past. When I finally settled beside him, scratching under his chin in the exact spot he preferred, my phone chimed with a text from Emily. "The kids made something for your new place. Can we stop by this weekend to deliver it?" I smiled, typing back, "Of course, I'd love that." Another chime followed, this time from James. "Vanessa's ultrasound tomorrow at 2. Would mean a lot if you could come." The invitation touched me deeply, not an obligation or expectation but a genuine desire to include me in a significant moment. "I'll be there," I replied, setting down my phone. I gazed around my small but perfect space, the watercolors I'd painted hanging on the walls, Oscar purring beside me, treasured objects from my past now integrated into my present, invitations to be part of my children's futures waiting to be fulfilled. 6 weeks ago, I had sat in my car outside James and Vanessa's house, feeling utterly alone and adrift. I had lost my husband, my home, my sense of place in the world. What I couldn't see then, and what I was only beginning to understand now, was that those losses had cleared the ground for something new to grow. Not a smaller life, as I had feared, but a larger one. Not an existence defined by absence, but one expanded by presence. My own fully realized presence in every moment, every choice, every relationship. The first snow of winter began to fall. Delicate flakes illuminated by the streetlights. I watched them dance in the darkness, each one unique, each one adding to the transforming landscape. By morning, the world would look different. Familiar contours softened and reshaped by the accumulation of these tiny changes. Just as I had been. The thought brought a smile to my lips and peace to my heart. Whatever came next, reconciliation or permanent separation from Rob, deepened connections with my children or continued navigation of our evolving relationships, new friendships or rekindled old ones, I would face it as myself. Not the self I had been before that fateful evening when my life imploded, but the self I was discovering day by day, choice by choice. Complete. Sufficient. Whole. The snow continued to fall, and I watched it with quiet joy. No longer mourning what was lost but celebrating what had been found, myself, at last.